What's going on, family? Welcome back to Israel's Movie Reviews. And today we're going to be discussing another all-time great film, in my humble opinion. And this is going back to 1992. And we're going to be talking about Steven Seagal's Under Siege. Yeah, I know Steven Seagal gets a lot of slack for, just what he became throughout the years and how he treated people back in the day. And you got a lot of former co-workers that really didn't think he was one of the best or genuine guys to work with during a movie, which was not great. But fortunately for us, it was very enjoyable to see on screen. I think Under Siege was one of his best films. And, back in the 90s, man, we were very, very congested, right? We had Steven Seagal, we had Van Damme, we had Chuck Norris back in the 70s, 80s. We had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone battling it out. And amongst a few others, you know what I mean? Eric Roberts and the Best in the Best series with Philip Ree, and there was just a lot of action stars, right? Not to mention Dolph Lundgren, right? But I think this by far is Steven Seagal's best work, man. One of the best films, and I think it's one of the only ones that you would truly call really good. Although I do enjoy the majority of his films. His others range from, to me, average to just plain, you know what I mean? Just right there. Like Mark for Death or Above the Law or Out for Justice. I love those films. But this one is very special. This is one of the great action films of all time. Gets a lot of slack too because it kind of reminded us it was around the same time as Die Hard, and just a few years removed. And Die Hard obviously was in a building in the airport for part two, and this one happens to be on a ship. So let's just get straight into it. It basically is Die Hard on a boat, right, on a ship for the most part. But this is one of the few successful Die Hard clones that we have. Andrew Davis made this before The Fugitive, which is the director of the film, and his direction, to me, is very tense, very exciting. What's more is he gets Steven Seagal's best performance on screen, which basically means he is slightly less wooden than usual, right? Steven Seagal usually got slack because he didn't come off as the best actor, although, his moves were awesome, even though he never really moved his legs. Steven Seagal is one of those action stars that rarely kicked. He did a lot of this. Steven Seagal, to me, he's one of those hilarious action guys because he took himself very, very serious. But, he's a Navy SEAL in this film. And, the plot revolves around this battleship, which is being taken out of use. In real life, this ship that they actually filmed the movie in was actually, decommissioned 6 months prior to this film being made. And, the plot revolves around the battleship, which is, being taken out of commission on its final run, coinciding with the captain's birthday in the film. The ship gets hijacked by terrorists who plan to use nuclear weapons on board. And what I loved about that part was it gets hijacked none other than the great Tommy Lee Jones, who is epic in this film, along with Gary Busey, who's just another legend on another level. And you have these, terrorists who plan to not only use these nuclear weapons on board, but they don't realize that Steven Seagal, who's a former Navy SEAL with more medals than a fucking metal shop, is on board as the ship's cook, as he's, actually pretty much, edging toward his 20-year retirement when, this gang of renegades basically take over the ship. Their mission is to sell off the ship's nuclear tipped Tomahawk missiles to the highest third world bidders and get millions and millions for them. The hijackers are pretty formidable, and they're highly trained specialists, and they're out as these monsters in the film. And like most successful teams, their leaders are kind of egomaniacs, and in this film they're fucking Looney Tunes, right? And because they're so good at what they do. You have Commander Krill, played by Gary Busey, and you have William Stranix, played by the great Tommy Lee Jones, who's a disgruntled former CIA op, and they're highly skilled professionals with a taste of revenge, right? Not surprisingly, you have Steven Seagal, who plays Ryback, who's this excellent, pie baking expertise. Like I mentioned, former Navy SEAL, has more medals than anyone, and he's pretty much downstairs. And that's when things turn. They try to occupy the ship, and that's when Steven Seagal uses his skills to cause problems for the terrorists. And all the moves that we see Steven Seagal do in his previous films actually are put really good to use in this film. Because in those films, you're like, he plays detectives or a cop. You don't really see cops, detectives use those skills, Aikido and all that stuff. But in this film, it makes sense, right? He's a decorated officer, just trying to live out the rest of his time as a cook. And that proves to be a very cost-effective blunder for the bad guys. Uses these skills, and he's aided by Miss July, who's actually shipped to the ship so that way she could perform for the people on the ship, and she ends up assisting our Steven Seagal. And she's played by Erica Eleniak, who I think was this big time model back in the day, who's certainly there for her looks, definitely ahead of her acting ability, but she wasn't bad. She, however, is a cut above Steven Seagal in that acting department. She was beautiful in her role. She was beautiful in the film. But although this movie is well paced, is well balanced, the action I think was top notch in this film. Steven Seagal's usual Aikido masterclasses on display on a high level, and some of the good gunfights in this film before the John Wick films, right? There was these kind of gunfights and impressive stunts. Steven Seagal also had a bit of a punch, but he looks a lot fitter in his recent films, where he kind of lumbers about. In this film, I feel his earlier films, he actually seems in kind of good shape, but it actually is good on him in this film. Overall, this movie was highly entertaining. Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey, I think, are scene-stealing beasts in this film. They take that scene-stealing form as the bad guys, and they kind of overshadow Steven Seagal in many ways in this film. Once the story begins, that psychotic, episodes that Gary Busey goes through, and that kind of chill but crazy, laid-back performance, very charismatic role that Tommy Lee endorsed throughout the film. It's really a good touch. Apparently, I think there's a lot of cohesiveness and a lot of chemistry between those two, and they try their best to stop out Steven Seagal. But I think it's what really helped this movie is there's a lot of witty scripting in this film. You can tell that the direction is surprisingly good. The story is very engaging for us. The action obviously is there. It's a Steven Seagal film, whether you like him or not. His films are action, and he doesn't give an amazing performance, but he does what he does best, and that's kick ass, the Steven Seagal way, and it's acceptable. Best of all, Gary Busey, Tommy Lee Jones, very charismatic. They steal the show for the most part, and all in all, one of Steven Seagal's best films. I give this movie 7.5 out of 10. Could have been slightly better, but I give it to them because there was problems. Although the tense and the entertainment was top notch, I think Steven Seagal tended to mumble less than usual in this film, but he didn't. He wasn't commando in this film like Stallone or Schwarzenegger. He kicked ass, but in a very, believe it or not, a very simple way. He didn't stand out to me in this film. But you might have a different opinion. So get back to me. Let me know what you think. And I look forward to hearing from you guys, man. Thank you for watching this review, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Deuces.